Screen Test 2 by Daniel Anderson, Ava Shara, and Dylan Gutierrez. Strategies for communicating with parents. First off, it is very important to communicate with a schedule and conference for parents as soon as a child is identified and needing for special help. Then when meeting the parents, it is important to be factual and not emotional. However, you must also balance this with being honest but not brutal. This is recommended that you ask about the parents' expectations for the child, ask about homework, and encourage them to be a part of a student study team. Parent preparation sheet. The purpose of the parent preparation sheet is to obtain information about the child that only the parent knows. Parents hold very important information that will be helpful in determining the plan for their child. The sheets ask questions such as what motivates their child and what they can do to help their child be more successful. These sheets are then brought to the SST meeting to assist in making a plan for the student. Predictable feelings and actions of parents. When parents first find out about their child is having a problem, the school experience is a variety of emotions and feelings, rearranging in intensity and duration. However, the most common feelings are denial, anger, guilt, blaming, resigning, depression, and acceptance. It is important to recognize how the parent may feel or be feeling to understand that these feelings are completely normal and that they may need time or information to help them accept the fact that their child is struggling in school. SST process. The student study team is responsible for the following: gathering data from the student, making plans and strategies to assist the student within the resources of general education teacher, monitoring the student's progress, help in building trust between the parent and the school, make referrals, or formal evaluation when needed. SST sample summary sheet. This sheet includes general student information such as student name, address, date of birth and address, reasons for referral, date and data regarding academic function, relevant personal information, and an attachment of intervention logs or work samples. Role of accommodations in the process of SST. The facilitator, which is either a principal or designee, greets and introduces the participants and appoints them to act as timekeepers so the meeting moves along quickly. The referring teacher leads off with a list of student strengths. This first starts off with a positive note and then moves on to the teacher talking about their concerns. The teacher must avoid comments of emotional nature. And then there is also the student study chairperson. Digital accommodations. There are many digital accommodations for special needs students in schools. As technology advances, we have more tools to assist students. Some of these accommodations include listening to audio recordings instead of reading text, using a calculator, use an alarm to help them with time management, voice text to avoid writing, and many other technological advances that may assist the student within their education. Sensory accommodations. Many students with special needs and sensory issues that stop them from doing certain activities. There are many things that teachers and other service providers can do to help students that struggle with sensory issues. For example, teachers may let students use alternative seating, let students work in a different position, use handheld fidgets, providing earplugs, provide gum, provide a weighted lap pad, weighted vest, or a wiggle cushion. Provisions of PL 94, the least restrictive environment, contains a provision that disabled students should be placed in the least restrictive environment, one that allows the maximum possible opportunity to interact with non-impaired students. Separate schooling may only occur when the nature or severity of the disability is such that instructional goals cannot be achieved in a regular classroom. Finally, the law contains a due process clause that guarantees an impartial hearing to resolve conflicts between the parents of disabled children through the school system.
Parental rights in the law. The law is designed so that parents are involved every step of the way. You get the best solutions when parents and teachers are working together. The law states that parents have the right to require their children's records be kept confidential, review records, have copies of all records, release records to non-school personnel, be notified 10 days in advance of any meeting, request an assessment for their child, be apprised of the assessment tools, request an individual evaluation, have input on the IEP, refuse services, have a private school placement, and request a fair hearing if a disagreement arises. Rockner versus Walter. During this court case, the court required that a school to serve a child with a disability in a non-segregated setting when the necessary supports could be provided to make that setting appropriate. Special education students need to be in the least restrictive environment and cannot be completely segregated from the general education students unless it is absolutely necessary. Law 34 CFR 300.116. This law states that recent changes to the IEDA regulations make clear that students with disabilities cannot be removed from the general education simply because they need modifications to the general curriculum. In other words, this is called the least restrictive environment, or the LRE. The LRE is a well-known requirement in the world of special education, and it was created to ensure that the children who receive special education services are remaining involved and socialized with the general education students. Universal Dedication Vision Statement. Made in October of 2015, the Universal Dedication Vision Statement includes a principle that honors the rights of students to learn together. This allows more inclusion for students with disabilities to teach them in an environment that they can comfortably communicate in. Highly qualified provisions of 20 U.S.C. 140110. A highly qualified special education teacher must have several qualifications related to providing specialized instruction, but now must also have the content matter qualifications that meet the highly qualified standards in the No Child Left Behind law, with two exceptions. This means that a teacher who teaches a segregated special education class must also be qualified to teach the age-appropriate general education curriculum. 20 U.S.C. 140129. In Michigan, special education classes must offer students with disabilities access to curriculum that addresses the grade level content up to grade 8, and the high school education standards 9 through 12th grade. A parent whose student attends a program not meeting these standards may challenge that practice through either a hearing or a complaint. LRE in Section 504. If students are placed away from a regular school, the facilities, equipment, and programs available in the placement must be comparable to those available in the regular schools. Multidisciplinary team process. The people on the multidisciplinary team evaluates a child's performance and determines if the child should seek further testing for diagnosing a child with a learning disability. This team individual includes a school psychologist, a classroom teacher, the special education specialist, a nurse who works for the school district, the parents, and school administrators.
Larry P. versus Riles, California, 1979. Controversy about whether IQ tests were racially and culturally discriminatory. Changed how children of color were tested. Intelligent quotient tests. Stanford, Binet, Intelligence Scale, Universal Nonverbal Intelligence, Differential Ability Scales, Peabody Individual Achievement Test, Wechsler Individual Achievement Test, Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, Woodcock, Johnson III Tests of Cognitive Disabilities. WISC 4. It generates a full-scale IQ, formerly known as an intelligence quotient or IQ score, that represents a child's general intellectual ability. It also provides 5 primary index scores: verbal comprehension index, visual spatial index, fluid reasoning index, working memory index, and processing speed index. These indices represent a child's abilities in discrete cognitive domains. 5 ancillary composite scores that can be derived from various combinations of primary and secondary subsets. Commonly used academic assessments: cognition intelligence, ability to reason, to think abstractly, and to solve problems. Verbal intelligence, ability to use cognitive process which rely primarily on verbal language. Nonverbal intelligence, ability to use cognitive processes which do not rely primarily on verbal language. Purpose of observation. The observation is supposed to tell you what the lesson was, tell what the student's responsibility was during the lesson, detail the student's degree of participation in the lesson, and state how his participation compared with that of other class members, stick to the facts, record verbatim any answers, questions, or comments made by the student, ask teacher to evaluate the student's work and to give you a copy of the student's paper to attach to your report, ask the teacher if today's performance was typical, and include a time on task report. Patterns of strengths and weaknesses. Discrepancy model. The discrepancy model used to be used the discrepancy model used to be used to determine whether or not a student had a learning disability and if they deserved services or not. This is no longer the only method of determining if a child receives services or not. The discrepancy model was designed so that if a student scored a very high in one area of a test but very low in another, there would be a discrepancy in the test scores. People believe that this discrepancy must have been caused by something else, such as a learning disability. There are many problems with this model, one of them being that only students with very large discrepancies were awarded services, leaving a lot of low-functioning students without the help they needed.